What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Football Friday edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. A deep dive into the NFL divisional matchups. A lot of people say the best weekend in all of sports, certainly with the NFL, as we welcome in our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 1029 FM The Game. You also hear him on The Drive with Q, my other show, as well as BYP. We're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first purchase. Check out the show notes below and just use the promo code BYP20. We've got 8 teams left, 4 games on the docket. The winners will advance to their respective championship games next weekend. And always good to touch base with you, my friend. And I know the weather's nasty out where we are, but I'm telling you, man, these games in the trenches is where it's going to be at on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, good talking to you. Elite Eight around the National Football League, and finally we get some real games. Last week we had some blowouts, and there was one close game, and
Yep.
you hope these games are going to live up to the hype. But yeah, I'm excited because these seem like four pretty good matchups.
Yeah, I think, we'll go obviously Saturday the early to Sunday the late. And I think the one game that potentially might be a little lopsided is Kansas City and the Texans. Now, I give the Texans a ton of credit for what they were able to do defensively against the Chargers. I didn't think Justin Herbert was going to play as poorly as he did for the Chargers, but it's a different animal on the road. Still, the Texans are a young team, banged up team. You got Kansas City, 8-0 at home, laying 8.5. The total is 41 and a half, and they are on a mission to not only get back to the Super Bowl for the third straight year, but win it for the third straight time. We're talking about back to back to back, just absolutely unmatched. We're talking now historical reverence right there with Kansas City. I believe this is going to be a game that's probably going to be a little more closer as we get into the third. And then Mahomes, Kelsey, the ground attack, the wide receivers, I think they're going to make some plays. I'm confident laying 8.5 with Kansas City in this one. I liken them for about a 31-17 game in this one.
Well, that is a lot of points, and there is a theme with three of these games. It's a rematch. So this one is from Week 16. Kansas City won 27-19. So you got to watch that half a point there. But Q, I definitely do agree with you that the Kansas City Chiefs should be able to handle the Houston Texans. The Texans did kind of surprise the Chargers, and it was defensively. It was Will Anderson, it was Daniil Hunter, these guys getting after people, and then Stingley Jr. in the secondary. So Ryans has created pretty good defense. CJ Stroud, we'll see what he has other than Nico Collins. But the key, obviously, is Kansas City and their offense. And their two tackles who struggle, Taylor and another guy, they have to block people. And we'll see how that up front they take care of business. But I do expect them, and particularly Patrick Mahomes, to get the ball out of his hands and make some plays to D Hop and all the rest of those weapons there with the Chiefs. So I expect the Chiefs to win this one. I'm not sure if they're going to win as big as you're predicting, but I definitely think it'll be close.
I think if Mixon goes off a little bit and he runs the football well, then the Texans can kind of keep it close. I just have a feeling though Stroud's going to turn the ball over a couple times. I think last week was an aberration. It's a tough spot for the Texans in this one. One of the marquee games, I think, when you look at points, Detroit and the upstart Washington Commanders, the Lions, a top seed in the NFC. They got to bye. Washington got the big win on the road late against Tampa Bay. They won 12 games. Their overall record sits at 13 and 5, 5 and 3 on the road. They're getting 9 in the hook, 9.5. This is the highest total of the weekend at 55.5. And a lot of people believe, myself included, if Washington's going to win this game, they have to figure out a way to score 28 plus, and they can ill afford to kick field goals in this game against Detroit. They have to score 7.
Yeah, it's another rematch, and this one's for week two. Detroit won this one 36-27. Well, actually, it was week two in 2022, but they played recently, and Jared Goff 4 TDs in that game, and the thing is they got to be able to handle Jaden Daniels, as you were saying. Jaden Daniels is the guy who's explosive. He has no fear. The Commanders are playing with house money at this
Yep.
point in the season. Uh, they're going there, young squad. Obviously, it's going to be tough to be the number one seed. We know that teams all coming off a bye played pretty well, and the key thing is for the Lions, they're starting to get healthy. So they're getting Anzalone back. They're getting some other pieces, particularly Dave Montgomery. with that knee injury going to play. And I expect them to move the football pretty well against this Washington defense. Let's face it, other than Chin and a couple other pieces on that defense, they kind of struggled this season. So I think Detroit wins this one, but that's another one at 9.5. It's a lot of points.
It is.
I may take the Commanders in the points, but I if you're going outright, I definitely think the Lions win this one.
I'll just say this. If you look at Washington after they had, a really nice winning streak where they kind of jumped out of the gate 7-2, they did drop three in a row. They had some injuries. The offense kind of came back down to earth. Daniels passed for 200, 191, and 276, all in losses to Pittsburgh, the Eagles, and Dallas. Then they went on the run where they won five. He threw and used his legs brilliantly in that win against Tampa Bay. Obviously, late with the fourth down touchdown conversion, threw for 268, ran for 36. He hasn't thrown for over 300 yards since the Chicago game. And we know what happened in that one with the Hail Mary. He's going to have to probably throw 30 plus times in this game, take advantage of that Lions secondary. Are they catching Detroit at a good time, meaning Detroit's got some injuries, some that they can't really help, and you lose guys to the IR? I just feel like the secondary and the pass rush for Detroit, if it's not there, Commanders are going to have an opportunity to win this game.
Definitely, and they could be catching a good time because the Commanders are a young team. Think about last year, the Packers went into Dallas, no fear. They're a young
None.
team, and they just wanted to play the game. And I think that's what the Commanders are going to kind of come in there with the attitude. Quinn has this group very loose, and Kingsbury's doing some good things offensively, and it's going to be on that Detroit defense, particularly Aaron Glenn. They've been kind of susceptible in the secondary this season to slow them down, particularly Terry McLaurin.
Yep.
So I think it's going to be a fun game. Uh, could be high scoring, obviously, with that over you talked about, 55.5. I expect some points in this one, and it should be a good watch.
Football Friday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. I'm Rich Quinones. Don't forget, you can log on to SR 1029 FM, the game. You can follow us throughout the week. And of course, BYP, also part of Leon Media Group, Leon Media Network. We are powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. BYP, powered by Fresh Roasted Coffee. Stay warm in the winter, some fresh brew. And of course, don't forget to check out our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. If you need something hot, they got you covered as well. Check out the link. And for savings, promo code BYP20 in our show notes. I think it's going to be a fascinating game. And I'll say this, a lot of pressure on Detroit. You're home, number one seed. A lot of wins, a lot of offense, a lot of fanfare. Haven't won a big time game in a long, long time. Inching closer and closer to getting a trip into the Super Bowl. It starts with a win against Washington, but that's a 24-21 type of game in the fourth quarter, and Washington has the ball down 3 or 4 with 6 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go. You know that stadium's going to be on edge.
Yeah, it's going to be an electric atmosphere, and they've been waiting a long time in Detroit. Yes, they got a little taste last year of being in the playoffs and having some success, but this year they're a prohibitive number one favorite, and they got to live up to expectations, particularly golf. And then you talk about if it's a close game, I trust Bates, who's the kicker for the Lions, much more than Zane Gonzalez, who banked it in last week for the Commanders, but
Yeah.
he's had his struggles this season, and then particularly watch the Commanders' offensive line. Their offensive line has had some struggles. Well, had some injuries up front there, haven't replaced some players from last year. So I think the line can get some pressure on Dayton Daniels.
All right, so that's a look at your Saturday action. Sunday, the Rams and Eagles do battle 3 o'clock inside the link, and then the Ravens and the Bills. A lot of people are circling this, perhaps the game of the year. Certainly could be a classic. That'll be a 6:30 affair. Divisional round, obviously Baltimore on the road against Buffalo. Weather's going to be nasty up and down the East Coast. Eagles are laying 6.5. The total is 43.5. I know the Rams got some injuries. Hopefully they can get the tight end going, get him back on the field. Defensively, they did an outstanding job against Minnesota and Darnold, sacking him 9 times, turning him over left and right. I don't think they're going to have that type of success against the Eagles. I believe this game comes down to 2 or 3 real simple factors. The Rams can't get beat over the top. They have to cause some turnovers. And even if they stack the box, if they can't get to Saquon, if Saquon's in that second level, ripping up yardage, and he carries the ball 25 times for $160, $150, $140, like the Eagles are going to ride the legs of Saquon. That offensive line in the trenches will be the difference. If they can't do that, they're in trouble. And you can put all the pressure in the world on Stafford, who's played very well in the playoffs, very well under McVay in the playoffs. Road, it's a little different animal. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been there before. He's not phased. The Rams definitely have a puncher's shot in this one. They're going to have to turn over Jalen Hurts. They're going to have to get a fluky play here. Just like Washington, kick return, punt block, field goal block, something goofy to try to suck the life out of the stadium and get that early momentum.
Yes, and it's going to take, a special teams play, a return, a block punt, something like that. And you saw the Eagles struggle early in this season with those types of plays. I think it was the Saints had a block kick against them, and the Rams, they're going to have to find a way. And
Mm-hmm.
they do have the veteran leadership of Stafford and McVay. They've already been to a Super Bowl. They've won it. So they've been in these type of situations. There's a couple factors though, Q. You have a team coming from the West. Unfortunately, with the fires and everything, they probably haven't been practicing at their own facility. So a lot of difficulty for this Rams team in preparation. I think the Eagles are well rested, and you hit on a couple key guys, particularly Saquon Barkley. Last time these two teams played in Week 12, Eagles win 37-20, but the key
Mm-hmm.
thing was Saquon had 255 yards rushing. They could not stop him in his Eagles' big offensive mauling line. I expect Kellen Moore to lay out that type of game plan again for the Eagles, where they're punching holes in this Rams defense that has verse and fit. They're attacking, but they're late. So I think the Eagles come after them, and the weather could play a factor, as you said. So I think the Eagles win. I'm not sure about covering at 6 points. And if it's a close game, no, the Eagles got to worry about Jake Elliott. Let's not forget, one
Good
of
point.
seven this season, 50
A real
yards or
good point.
more, and he struggled. But defensively, the Eagles are playing very well with Jalen Carter and the rest of those guys. They've allowed 13 or fewer points in three straight games.
Yeah, it's a great job illustrating that stat and that point. Kickers, 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 man. I mean, how many big time moments, how many big time games has it come down to special teams? Again, Football Friday edition, back your play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Don't forget, we are on Amazon Music, Spotify, Buzzsprout. You can just follow along in the show notes, click and download, and you are good to go. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. I do like the Eagles in this game, but I do think it's going to be a hard fought in the trenches type of game. And I can see Saquon breaking one late. I'm not going to say it's going to cover the nut, but just say that 6.5. It's going to be a close game, which leads us to the final game on Sunday night: the Ravens and the Bills. I mean, hell, you would love to pencil yourself in for this for the AFC Championship. It's not about Allen or Jackson, but Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, respectively, have had outstanding seasons, both MVP, perennial MVP caliber talent. Obviously, the Ravens come in. They're on a mission. Buffalo's at home. They're on a mission. Buffalo's getting a point plus in this one. It'll probably sit around a point and a half, two. It'll probably close maybe at one. Who knows? I've been torn with this one because I'm a huge Allen fan. I understand the Bills Mafia, the faithful. They know. Let's just say the Texans trip up Kansas City and upset Kansas City. So they're sitting there Saturday night and they're thinking to themselves, it's like when Jordan retired. Like, if not now, when, right? The scheduling quirk actually works in their favor because they'll know it's not going to demotivate them, more motivate them, inspire them. But point being is sometimes you look and you're like, you start to look ahead. I don't believe that's the case between two really good teams, two really well coached teams. It's simple for me. If you cannot if you cannot keep Allen upright, number one, if pass protection breaks down, they're going to be in trouble. And it goes back to the trenches in the ground game. If you allow Derrick Henry to get those 13, 16, 22-yard chunk plays and Lamar do what he does with his legs, and you don't have a spy or a roam, or Pittsburgh tried it and he ran off 7 straight rushing plays to start the game in the opening drive, then the Bills are going to get waxed in this one. Offensively, they can stay with Baltimore, but defensively, that worries me a little bit.
Yeah, here, this is interesting. Another interesting one because in week 4, these two teams played.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore waxed them 35-10, and
Yep.
and they're two of the higher scoring teams in the National Football League. Buffalo's averaging 30.9 points per game. Baltimore 30.5. So they can put up some points. I do think the weather is going to be a factor in this one. It's all Lamar Jackson's shoulders, as you were kind of talking about early on. He's 3-4 in the playoffs. This is his chance to say, okay, I am the real MVP out here. And I know they don't play on the same side of the ball, but him and Josh Allen are going to try to outdo each other. When you talk about basketball, think about Jordan and some of his classic matchups and some guys in the playoffs. And It's going to be fun to watch. I've been back and forth on this one, as you said. The Bills are a home dog, and I just feel like it's the Bills' time. They have that look almost like the Eagles in 2017. I don't know if they're going to win the Super Bowl, but at least they may have a good opportunity to make it. They're at home. Their crowd's going to be electric, and they are going to have to stop Derrick Henry because he's running downhill right now. Baltimore wants to get that big lead and then have Henry be the hammer at the end, closing things out. So I expect a close game, back and forth battle, and another one where the kickers may factor. Justin Tucker has struggled all season, so you have to kind of factor that in. I just feel like Allen's going to make a couple key plays here and there, particularly maybe Cooper gets involved and defensively they get an interception or something. But I expect the Bills to win a close game.
Yeah, another good point with Tucker, Hall of Fame kicker, has struggled mightily. Special teams, man, it always comes down two or three plays in a game like this. And I think for some of these games that we talked about as we start to close it out, you also have to limit possessions. If you're the Rams, you got to limit offensive possessions by the Eagles. If you're Washington, you got to run the football, keep that Lions offense off the field. Same with the Texans. The Bills and Ravens, even though it's supposed to be weather-wise just a crappy night and day, who knows? Maybe they both combine for 50 something odd point. You just never know. I am going to go with the Ravens. Derrick Henry late in this game, he rips one off and he breaks one. Lamar will do enough. Josh Allen's going to sling it his damnedest and keep them in the game. But I think it kind of, the trend is, the home teams aside from that last game, the Ravens on the road.
Yeah, last week, only one visiting team won, so it's going to be interesting to see if that trend holds. But I expect the strong quarterback play and coaching. Let's not forget the decisions because Cam will be very aggressive. The Dan Quinn be aggressive. That's going to factor into the game. So yeah, I expect a good slate and hopefully we got some good watches to talk about.
We will definitely have some good games to recap on Monday's edition of The Drive from 4 to 6 on Sports Radio 1029 FM. The Game. Lloyd Vance also does Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 8 to 9 on Monday night. So you'll get a lot of football content on Monday as we recap all the divisional matchups. Later in the week, we'll start to get into the coaching carousel. We'll look at some odds for some of these landing spots for some of these head coaches. But Lloyd was kind enough to join us, as always, on a Friday edition of BYP, powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Check out the show notes, 20% off your first purchase. Use the promo code BYP20. All right, my friend. And then there were 8, soon to be 4. Always appreciate it. Enjoy the games, Saturday and Sunday divisional matchups.
All right, Q. Thanks for having me on.